In the small, sun-baked town of Willow Creek, whispers filled the air about a notorious outlaw named Jack One-Eyed McGraw. With his rugged appearance and a scar that ran down his cheek, he was a figure of both fear and fascination. The townsfolk spoke of him in hushed tones, sharing tales of his daring robberies and narrow escapes from the law. He had become a legend, with each story growing taller than the last. Jack was not just any criminal. He was clever and quick, evading capture time and time again. He rode a black horse named Midnight, whose speed matched his own. The townspeople watched with wide eyes as he galloped through the streets, leaving chaos in his wake. Store owners bolted their doors at the first hint of trouble, praying for safety as they remembered how he had stolen from the bank without breaking a sweat. Law enforcement also felt the weight of Jack's reputation. Sheriff Thompson, a stern man with a strong sense of justice, had made it his mission to catch the outlaw. However, every plan he devised seemed to fall short against Jack's cunning tricks. The sheriff's frustration grew as days turned into weeks with no sign of Jack's capture. Fear lingered in Willow Creek like a shadow. Mothers warned their children not to wander after dark, while men gathered at the saloon to share strategies for bringing Jack to justice. Little did they know that events were about to unfold that would change everything in their quiet town forever. Sheriff Thompson stood tall and resolute, embodying the law and order that Willow Creek desperately needed. With a broad-brimmed hat casting shadows over his stern face, he was a man of few words but many principles. Known for his unwavering dedication to justice, he patrolled the town with a stern gaze, always on the lookout for wrongdoing. The townspeople respected him, often seeking his guidance in times of trouble. Unlike Jack McGraw, who thrived in chaos, Sheriff Thompson believed in rules and fairness. He had grown up in Willow Creek, learning from his father about honor and duty. As a young boy, he watched as the community flourished under honest leadership, and now he felt it was his mission to restore that sense of safety. Each time Jack struck, Thompson's determination only grew stronger. He spent sleepless nights devising plans to capture the elusive outlaw. The sheriff knew that apprehending Jack would not come easy. It required cunning and strategy, qualities he possessed but had yet to put into action against such a slippery foe. Every time news of another robbery reached his ears, anger boiled within him. He could almost hear the whispers of the townsfolk questioning his abilities to protect them. In this battle of wits between lawman and outlaw, Sheriff Thompson had one thing on his side: an unyielding belief that justice would prevail. As fear continued to grip Willow Creek, the impending clash between these two strong characters loomed ever closer. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows on the dusty streets of Willow Creek. Sheriff Thompson stood ready, his heart pounding as he awaited the outlaw's arrival. News had spread that Jack One-Eyed McGraw was in town, and the sheriff knew he had to act fast to prevent another robbery. The tension in the air was electric, and townsfolk peered through window shutters, holding their breath as they anticipated the clash. Suddenly, a thunderous gallop echoed through the town, and there he was, Jack McGraw, with a devil-may-care grin plastered across his scarred face. Riding Midnight, he weaved through the streets with an arrogant flair, reveling in the fear he inspired. Thompson clenched his jaw, his grip tightening on the handle of his gun as he stepped into the street, calling out to the outlaw. "Jack, this ends now," he shouted, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. Jack laughed, a sound both mocking and electrifying. "You think you can catch me, Sheriff? I've always been one step ahead." In that moment, adrenaline surged through both men. The lawman and the outlaw squared off amidst a gathering crowd, eyes locked in a deadly dance of determination and defiance. With a swift motion, Jack reached for his gun, ready to escape once again. But Sheriff Thompson would not back down. As shots rang out and dust flew, it was clear that this showdown would mark a turning point for both Willow Creek and its steadfast sheriff. The air was thick with dust and tension as Sheriff Thompson and Jack McGraw engaged in their fierce duel. Shots rang out, echoing through the streets of Willow Creek, but the outlaw was quick, darting between buildings like a shadow. Just when it seemed Jack might escape once more, Thompson's instincts kicked in. He remembered the old livery stable on the outskirts of town, an area Jack often used to hide. With determination blazing in his eyes, Thompson mounted his horse and galloped after Jack, the town blurring behind him. Dust kicked up beneath Midnight's hooves as he raced through the narrow alleys. The chase wound through the countryside, with Jack narrowly avoiding capture at every turn. However, Thompson's relentless pursuit gave him an edge. He knew the terrain well and began to anticipate Jack's next moves. Finally, after what felt like hours, they reached the livery stable. Jack thought he could slip away unnoticed, but Thompson had arrived just in time. As the outlaw attempted to jump onto Midnight for one last dash to freedom, the sheriff sprang into action. With swift precision, he dismounted and tackled Jack to the ground. Cheers erupted from the townsfolk who had gathered nearby, witnessing the thrilling conclusion to a long and desperate pursuit. Sheriff Thompson stood tall over Jack McGraw, relief washing over him as he finally brought the outlaw to justice. The weight of fear that had gripped Willow Creek began to dissipate, replaced by a renewed sense of safety and hope for the future. As Sheriff Thompson led Jack One-Eyed McGraw back to town, the air was thick with a mix of triumph and tension. The townsfolk had finally seen justice served, yet an unexpected heaviness hung over the sheriff's heart. Once they reached the courthouse, McGraw was shackled and prepared for his sentencing. However, before the judge could unleash his verdict, Jack raised a hand, a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. "I have one last request," he said, his voice steady but tinged with sincerity. The room fell silent, and curious glances passed between the sheriff and townspeople. What could the notorious outlaw possibly want after all he had done? Thompson crossed his arms, waiting for an answer while trying to read McGraw's expression. "I want to see my daughter," Jack stated firmly but quietly. "I haven't seen her since she was a baby. I fear she thinks I abandoned her." The sheriff was taken aback. This plea revealed a softer side of the outlaw that had been hidden beneath layers of bravado and fear. The townsfolk began murmuring among themselves, their anger towards Jack shifting toward pity. Thompson, although hesitant, recognized the weight of the situation. Jack's hardened facade cracked momentarily, revealing a father who longed for redemption. As he stood there contemplating the outlaw's request, Thompson realized that perhaps there was more to McGraw than just the criminal he had pursued for so long. This unexpected moment would challenge everything Thompson thought he knew about justice and forgiveness. As Jack McGraw's request hung in the air, the atmosphere in the courthouse shifted dramatically. The townsfolk exchanged bewildered glances, their initial anger towards the outlaw giving way to a mix of disbelief and sympathy. Some were quick to voice their outrage, insisting that a man like Jack should not be afforded such a privilege, while others stood silently, contemplating the plea of a father yearning to reconnect with his daughter. Martha, the local baker, shook her head in disbelief. "After everything he's done, how can we even consider this?" she muttered, crossing her arms tightly. Meanwhile, old Mr. Jenkins, who had watched Jack's antics from afar for years, felt a pang of compassion. "A child deserves to know her father," he whispered to anyone who would listen, his voice heavy with understanding. Sheriff Thompson observed the crowd closely, noting the divided opinions swirling around him. He could sense the tension building as some townsfolk stepped forward, eager to voice their support for Jack's request, while others remained staunchly opposed. The sheriff himself felt an unexpected warmth in his heart. He had never thought of McGraw as anything but an outlaw. As discussions erupted amongst the crowd, Thompson realized that this moment could change not only Jack's fate, but also the way Willow Creek would view its justice system. Would they allow a glimpse of humanity to shine through the hardened exterior of a man they had once feared? The stage was set for a decision that would echo through the town long after the dust had settled. As the debate continued in the courthouse, Sheriff Thompson found himself lost in thought, grappling with a profound internal conflict. On one side lay his duty as lawman, the obligation to uphold justice and ensure that Jack McGraw faced the consequences of his actions. After all, the outlaw had terrorized the town for far too long, robbing and instilling fear in its citizens. Yet, on the other side was a flicker of empathy that he struggled to suppress. Jack's plea to see his daughter revealed a humanity that Thompson had never considered before. The sheriff paced back and forth, the weight of his badge feeling heavier than ever. He thought about the townsfolk's collective pain, each robbery leaving scars on their hearts, and the lawman in him insisted that justice must prevail. However, he couldn't ignore the image of a father yearning for connection, a man who had made mistakes but was now seeking redemption. Thompson's heart raced as he imagined allowing Jack to see his daughter. What message would that send? Would it undermine the safety he was determined to provide? But then he recalled his own childhood. A father's love was irreplaceable. It struck him that perhaps justice wasn't just about punishment. Perhaps it could also be about understanding. Faced with this dilemma, Thompson felt torn between enforcing the law and recognizing Jack's humanity. The choice loomed before him, and he knew that whatever he decided would echo through Willow Creek long after this moment passed. As Thompson stood in the courthouse, considering Jack McGraw's request, a profound change began to take root within him. The murmurs of the townsfolk faded into the background, and all he could think about was the image of Jack as a father, desperate to reconnect with the daughter he had lost. Thompson felt the weight of his badge pressing down as the lawman in him wrestled with a new understanding of mercy. He recalled the stories he had heard over the years, how every action has a consequence, yet how every person carries the potential for change. Was it truly just to deny a man his chance at redemption simply because of his past? A vision of young girls playing in the sun, laughter filling the air, glimmered in his mind. He could almost hear the innocent call of a child longing for her father's embrace while also sensing the fear of a community that had suffered. Thompson paced back and forth, feeling torn. If he granted Jack's wish, would it undermine his role as protector of the town? But what kind of justice ignored the chance for healing? Finally, he decided that perhaps mercy did not negate justice. Instead, it could affirm it. With each breath, his heart began shifting toward compassion. It became clear to him that allowing Jack to see his daughter could be a powerful step toward healing. Not just for the outlaw but for Willow Creek too. Thompson took a deep breath, knowing that this choice could lead to redemption for both himself and Jack McGraw. With a heavy heart but a determined spirit, Sheriff Thompson made his way to the courthouse the next day to fulfill Jack McGraw's surprising request. He understood the weight of his decision and how it could redefine the expectations of justice in Willow Creek. After gathering a small group of townsfolk who had been sympathetic to Jack's plight, he set off to find the outlaw's daughter. As they approached the small, run-down cabin where Jack's daughter lived, Thompson felt a mix of hope and apprehension. What would this moment be like for both father and daughter? As they reached the door, he knocked gently, and a young girl, no more than 6 years old, opened the door, her wide eyes filled with curiosity. "Is my daddy coming home?" she asked innocently. Thompson felt a lump in his throat. "Your father wants to see you," he replied softly, gesturing for her to follow him. He led her back to the courthouse, where Jack awaited her arrival, his heart racing. When they reunited, it was an unexpected scene. Jack dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his cheeks as he embraced his daughter. "I'm so sorry for being away," he whispered, holding her tightly. The townsfolk watched, touched by the raw emotion unfolding before them. This moment transformed the courtroom from a place of judgment into one of compassion and humanity. Thompson realized that justice wasn't solely about punishment but also about understanding and healing. As father and daughter shared their first embrace in years, it became clear that this encounter could begin a journey toward redemption not just for Jack, but for everyone in Willow Creek. In the weeks that followed Jack McGraw's emotional reunion with his daughter, the atmosphere in Willow Creek began to transform. The townsfolk, once gripped by fear and anger toward the outlaw, found themselves reflecting on their own humanity. Conversations shifted from gossip about Jack's past to discussions about second chances and the power of forgiveness. Children played more freely in the streets, and parents felt a renewed sense of hope for their community. Sheriff Thompson, too, underwent a profound change. His experience with Jack had reshaped his understanding of justice. No longer was it simply about enforcing laws. It was also about nurturing a community where people could learn from their mistakes and grow. He began to implement programs aimed at rehabilitation, inviting former outlaws and townspeople alike to share their stories and foster understanding among all. Jack's request had opened a door that no one in Willow Creek knew existed. It had revealed that beneath the rough exterior of an outlaw lay a man capable of love and remorse. For Thompson, this realization became a guiding principle as he worked tirelessly to bridge the divide between law enforcement and the community. As time passed, the legacy of that pivotal moment in the courthouse lingered. Willow Creek evolved into a town marked not just by its history, but by its capacity for compassion and healing. Sheriff Thompson had learned that true strength lies in understanding others, and the bonds forged through mercy would forever shape the identity of both the lawman and the town he protected. In embracing forgiveness, they had taken a definitive step towards a brighter future together.